I'm gonna let her play then for a little bit.
Okay, she's not doing Blowing in the Wind yet,
She's
has
kind
she?
of played it over and over. She's playing it right now, but she's playing it over and over, which is your mom. I don't think even heard it. She's, but
All these details. It works so hard to do. And she's gonna be like, they didn't even say that.
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
So good.
yeah. So
All right, I'm gonna steal this.
not later. I'll put them right back. I just wanted to say
Actually, you can dump them in that bag if you want.
I just didn't want her to go.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want to turn it on now, you can. Thank you.
Highest intensity or the?
Oh, it's fine. Thanks. One more minute. Good afternoon. On behalf of Paula and her children and grandchildren, and even a nephew and brother-in-law and grandchild of the brother-in-law that flew in from Houston, welcome and thank you so much for being here. Your presence means so much in celebrating the life of and mourning Bem. Susan Mora was our violinist who was playing, and I just wanted to take a moment to introduce her because she'll be playing throughout the service. I also want to just give you a heads up that if you have some thoughts you'd like to share, there will be an opportunity for that later in the service. So if you've been pondering it and thinking about it, there will be a time for you to do that, and we'd love to hear all the stories that we can about Bem. If you're comfortable, if you'd please bow your heads, close your eyes, and soften your gaze, feeling the energy of this sacred gathering, the presence of those around you, and the presence of Bem's eternal spirit, who through his life brought this tapestry of people together at this time in this place. Take the deepest breath you've taken all day, breathing love in and breathing love out. Spirit of life, source of all being, we gather today in remembrance of Bem. We acknowledge the presence of that which is greater than ourselves, that which connects us all. In this time of grief, we seek your comfort and your peace. May we find solace in the shared memories of Bem, and may we feel the support of those who surround us. We honor the spirit of Bem, recognizing the unique imprint he left upon our lives. May his essence continue to inspire us, and may we find strength in the love that remains. Grant us the wisdom to embrace the mystery of life and death, and to find hope in the enduring nature of the human spirit. May we leave here with hearts filled with gratitude for the time we shared, and with a renewed sense of connection to one another. May it be so. Now we're going to hear from a dear family friend, Sarah Bierling, who will be singing Make Me Feel My Love, composed by Bob Dylan, one of Bem's favorites. In fact, Blowing in the Wind was part of our entrance music today. I found it a little ironic that Bem so loved Bob Dylan, who was a complete unknown, and Bem, in many ways, was a complete known. And so we'll hear now, Make Me Feel My Love.
When the rain is blowing in your face,
And now I'd like to introduce Kathleen, one of Bem and Paula's children, who will be reading Remember Them by a Sufi mystic, Rumi.
At the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind in the chill in winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of the spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of the autumn, we remember them. Sorry. At the beginning of the year, when it ends, we remember them.
As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now a part of us as we remember them.
When I sat down with the family earlier this week, I couldn't help but ask a question that maybe some of you might share. What nationality is the name Bem? Here we go. And there are several Bems in the audience, just saying. They shared that the name is associated with a Polish general. I later learned in my research that General Joseph Bem was a hero in both Poland and Hungary in the 19th century. I also read on Ancestry.com that the name originated on the African continent and means peace. This discovery could not be more fitting for Bem, as you may already know or soon shall see. I met Bem just once, but I've known his beloved daughter, Margaret, for many years. During the family meeting, I learned that he'd written an autobiography, Experiences with Race, Growing Up White in America. And as someone who's officiated at funerals before, what a gift to have an autobiography to read before today, to really get to know him. More about that later. Paula, you and Bem are a testimony to committed love. On July 23rd, you will have been married 60 years. Bem's love for you manifested itself from the beginning. I learned from Paula that Bem and she were both students at the University of Houston. As Paula tells it, one of Bem's friends asked him if he was interested in any of the girls at the party. And from across the room, he pointed at lovely Paula. It truly was love at first sight. They married, and Paula taught at one of the first integrated elementary schools in Houston, while Bem finished his PhD in psychology. After presenting his dissertation findings to the faculty at Western Illinois University, Bem was offered a position. He writes in this book that I tried to sugarcoat my description of Western Illinois University's home and surrounding areas, oceans of gorgeous green corn and soybean plants, or something equally disingenuous, would come to haunt me when Paula actually saw the place. In Macomb, Illinois, they built a life and home together, welcoming 3 beautiful children, all of whom were deeply and uniquely loved by Bem. If you haven't already, take a moment to read Kathleen's tribute on the program of service today. And Margaret will be sharing a few memories and thoughts with us in a moment. Bem demonstrated his love for Paula daily. He made and served her coffee every morning, I learned. He held her hand figuratively and literally all the time. And if she got up from her chair to do something, he'd get up and ask how he could help. I would be remiss if I didn't share that more recently, Paula and Bem adopted a tiny Maltese mixed rescue dog, Molly. Bem adored Molly, and Molly is diabetic. Despite posted reminders around the house not to feed her, Bem would feed her Fritos. He simply could not deny her. Paula, I imagine that Molly, too, is grieving the loss of your beloved Bem. May you be a source of comfort to one another in the coming days. Bem's love extended beyond his own family. I heard from family repeatedly that Bem saw and nurtured the essential goodness in every person who crossed his path. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, and the many, many college students he taught over the years at Western Illinois University. In the preface to his autobiography, he wrote about a talk he gave in 2005. When I finished, this is his words, when I finished and expressed a willingness to answer questions, one of the several young black men in the audience raised his hand. He wondered why a white man had spent most his life contemplating, researching, and talking about racial prejudice. My parents immediately came to mind. Their families had settled in the Confederate South before the Civil War. Racial prejudice was a major part of my parents' worldview. I answered, when your parents are extreme on an important issue, you either embrace their position or oppose it. Bem spent his life opposing racial prejudice. Not only did he oppose it philosophically and professionally, he took action with his beloved Paula, creating a home in which all were welcome, irrespective of skin color. And his children, Margaret, Kathleen, and Bem, have spent their lives embracing Bem's positions and teaching the next generation, Bem's grandchildren, Courtney, Caitlin, Kelly, Emma, Henry, and Josh, to do the same. And now I'd like to introduce Margaret, his firstborn child, who will share a few precious dad stories.
And Bem, you too, honey. Love you. He loved you. My dad was a man before his time. In the 70s, he was helping with nighttime routine, grocery shopping, changing diapers, etc. I don't think that was the norm, especially since the Faculty Wives Association still existed in the department. His routine with me when I was little was to wrestle the Woof Woof man to the floor in a great battle and toss him out the window. I thought it was hilarious, but we just want to make sure everyone knows we don't support telling children that there's a monster in their closet. It was the 70s, and my dad was not a child psychologist. Important to remember throughout this entire story. My dad devised a diaper improvement system for my siblings. So Kathleen and Bem were 14 months apart, and I was 3.5 years older than Kathleen. So Dad reasoned that if he poked a hole in the first disposable diaper and then put another diaper on it, then the system would last through the night. So to this day, it's a wonder that my siblings can walk, given the enormous diapers that they wore. So my dad carried me up to bed every night until I couldn't fit in the stairwell because I had grown to my enormous height that you all love now. That was a really sad realization because it was so special that he would do that. We would always read together before bed. Encyclopedia Brown was my favorite because I loved trying to solve the mystery with him. When I was in junior high, my mom worked nights, and so my dad did the morning routine. It was the style in the early 80s in Macomb. I'm not going to speak for the rest of the world, but to have creases down the front of your jeans. So my dad would iron those creases in my jeans before school. He also packed us lunch, and those, I can still taste like the enormous amount of peanut butter that my dad would put on those sandwiches, more than you ever want in your life. My dad was a feminist before many women would admit to being a feminist. He was a proud member of the National Organization for Women. I think it was in 1982 when, as a family, we went to Springfield, Illinois, to march for the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. I was 13 in 1982. I was mortified to be the only girl. I mean, I'm the only, girl in my junior high that's going to a march. But secretly, I was very proud that my dad cared about my rights for equality. My dad always instilled in us that we could do whatever we wanted in life. However, he stressed that you had a duty to give back. Honesty and integrity were huge for my dad. Once when I was little, I found a paper sack full of money. In my mind, it was full of money. It was probably like a couple coins. But I ran home with my stash. I was so excited. And my dad said, "Is that your money?" And I said, "Heck yeah, finders keepers and all that." And no, that was not going to fly at my house. We had to contact the police and report the money had been found. We waited for 2 weeks to see if anybody claimed it, and when no one claimed it, I was allowed to keep it. So talk about suck the joy out of an epic find. However, lesson learned, Dad. My parents had always tithed a generous percentage of their income to charities. They particularly focused on poverty, racism, and other social justice issues. A story that best, or I think well illustrates who my dad was, is about 10 years ago, he saw a man walking through his neighborhood every day with bags of ice coming from the grocery store back to the neighborhood, and he surmised that the man must not have a refrigerator. So my dad figured out where he lived. He probably stalked him, I don't know. And he had a refrigerator delivered to the man's home so that he wouldn't have to go get ice every day. My dad didn't tell anyone that story because that's not who my dad was, but my mom let us know about that. Dad did take some things a bit too far, namely his frugality. He was always on the lookout for a car deal. One day, he came home with this horrible car. It was this boxy thing from the 60s. It didn't even have a color. It was like that pre-painted metallic nightmare. So, of course, we were excited, though, because we had something new. So we ran out to see this new treasure. We were then informed that it used to be a chicken coop on a farm. And a shock of the world, the farmer and no one else wanted this chicken coop car. So my dad, of course, took it. We spent the rest of the day cleaning corn, feathers, and stuff you don't want to know about out of this chicken coop car. So my dad had to rig this lovely vehicle in order to get it started. So for all my dad's many talents, fixing and rigging things were not among them. So the car needed a new choke. So my dad, instead of hiring a person who actually knows how to fix cars, decided that he could fix this car. So he took the top of a frozen lemonade can, if you remember those, you take the top off, and somehow fashioned that into a choke. But instead of pulling the choke out to start the car, you had to push it in because he installed it backwards. So he would get so annoyed with it drove my mom insane, and he would get annoyed with her every time she would stall the car, as if it wasn't his fault that he installed the choke backwards. So we eventually renamed the chicken coop car the Clunker. And one day, Dad's taking me to junior high in this awful car, as if that's not bad enough. So I said, Dad, turn off the windshield wipers. It's not raining. And he's like, well, they don't work. They don't turn off anymore. This is just how they are. And I said, so I started saying, stop the car, let me out at the corner, I'll walk. Oh my God. So here are some other examples of Dad's waste not, want not. So this here is a perfectly good pencil. Many years of use left in that thing. This is an appropriate amount of paper towel to use if you spill. You do not need to waste a whole half sheet. When my duct tape to cars, you name it. One of my dad's greatest and most embarrassing traits, if you were a teenager, was that he did not care what anyone thought about him. So even though he was typically Mr. Safety, he decided to buy a motorcycle in the 1980s. And Macomb was a small town, but it was still about a 10-minute drive from our house out to the university. So Dad decided that he was going to ride his motorcycle even in the winter, and he was unable to find warm enough winter motorcycle riding gloves. Also shocking. So he had a pair of these puffy mittens, and he took carpet remnants and wrapped it around the top. And then he took a sock and he put it over and he sewed the sock around to hold the carpet. And then for the thumb, he put one of my brother's old baby socks on the thumb and sewed that on to keep the carpet on. So one day, and then he put this bright orange jacket on, to finish the look and make sure no one hit him. So one day he comes home from the university and he says, somebody said they saw me on my motorcycle. How did they know it was me? He was a character. I think we all were kind of, silenced by that. But I was a teenager, and I wanted to say, because you're the only person in town that dresses like that. My dad was an avid health nut, and that's really even before that was a thing. He worked out a lot, and he only ate junk on one day of the week. So he's a very disciplined man. So junk was anything with sugar or processed or anything like that. I know his colleagues remember his sardines that he ate in the lunchroom, and I'm sure they can still smell those things to this day. So one day, Kathleen was sitting in class in junior high, and another kid said, "Hey, Kathy, isn't that your dad?" Kathleen looked out the window to see my dad with his curly hair bunched up with a sweatband around his head and his little wrist sweatbands and a Coors Beer T-shirt and the shortest 1970s shorts you've ever seen, jogging around the school. And Kathleen looks out the window and says, "Nope, never seen that guy before." Of course, it's a small town. Everybody knew it was their dad. As most of you know, my dad was a professor at Western Illinois University. He embodied professordom down to his lamb chop sideburns in the 70s and his lifelong beard thereafter. He even smoked a pipe for a while just to, really seal the deal. Professor. But Dad had 2 huge dictionaries like this in his office at home. Spelling was not his gift, and this is way, way before spell check. So one time I said, "Dad, why do you need 2 of these enormous dictionaries?" He seemed to think that was a ridiculous question and said, "Because if I can't find a word I want to use in one of them, then I can look in the other one, and surely it will be there." So I pointed out that if he is using a word that is not in one of those dictionaries, no one else knows that word. That was not an appreciated comment. So Dad always wanted us to have a big vocabulary. We always had a word of the week on the refrigerator to learn. And the one I first recall learning was I was stalling to go to bed, and he said, "Margaret, stop filibustering," which resulted in a trip to the dictionary to see what that was. So my dad also did not believe in sheltering kids from the reality of the world. He studied World War II extensively. We knew all about the atrocities of World War II. He discussed racism, sexism, ageism, and social justice issues with us at length. He wanted us to be critical thinkers and use our skills to fight for justice for everyone. My dad loved being a professor. He loved teaching, researching, and writing. His career was made all the better because he had so many wonderful colleagues, Charlie into a great storyteller, with each class ending with his students wanting more. Great colleague and professor. Doug McCollum, who is now retired PhD professor, shared that he went to college in the 70s to become a rock and roll star and avoid the draft. He said that he had a .09 GPA at the end of his freshman year. He went on to explain that my junior year, I took a class from Dr. Bem Allen, and something amazing happened that had never happened to me before. I was the only one in the class to get an essay question correct. Dr. Allen asked me to be his undergraduate research assistant. He convinced me to go to graduate school and used his influence to get me a departmental graduate assistantship. Dr. Allen's mentorship was the catalyst for me to develop a sense of competence and self-acceptance. He played the most profound role in my professional development. I would not have had a career in psychology without your dad. Mark Swerdlick was one of Dad's first graduate students. He said, "I recall students held your dad in high esteem. He was a model of an effective teacher as well as a productive scholar. I have only fond memories of my time at WIU, and your dad is a significant part of many of those memories. I hope I have paid it forward, treating my many graduate assistants during my tenure at Illinois State University with the same level of respect and concern your dad treated me." One of my dad's greatest commitments as a professor was to support and mentor first-generation, underrepresented, and marginalized students. He felt that dedicated mentorship for students was an essential component of quality education. Ebony Zamani was my dad's most special mentee. As they built a lifelong friendship, he came to adore her and was so very proud of her. He thought of her as his third daughter. She couldn't be here today as she had another commitment, but she sent those beautiful white flowers. She is now Dr. Ebony Zamoni Gallagher, the Dean of the University of Pittsburgh School of Education. Ebony sent the following email. "It's difficult to fully capture what he meant to me. At age 19, during second semester of my freshman year, I registered for the Personality and Adjustment course with Dr. Allen. It was during this class that he saw something in me. As I completed the class, he said we should talk about my future. I would see him around Wagner Hall, and he'd say the same thing. A year later, I finally went to see him, and he asked, 'What do you want to be when you grow up?' And I jokingly said, 'Maybe I'll be a professor like you.' As I laughed, he kept a straight face, looked at me, and said, 'So you're going to be a professor, you'll need a PhD.' He then said we should meet 2 to 3 times per term to discuss next steps toward my goals. I told him I have an advisor, to which he replied, 'But do you have a mentor?' As a first-generation college student, I wasn't familiar with what a mentor was, but from that day, he was a mainstay of support and encouragement for a little over 4 decades. He was more than just a mentor, but my academic surrogate father, who I affectionately nicknamed Two Daddy for second father. He coupled challenge with care. He reminded me of my personal power to excel and be my best self. Dr. Allen was the epitome of a master teacher, a well-respected scholar. He humanized the academy through the dedication to educating, elevating, and empowering students to self-actualize. He was an egalitarian, a guiding light, a cheerleader, and constructive critic. Ever the source of wisdom, his influence shaped not only my career, but my perspective on life. Like my parents, he valued hard work, the importance of integrity, and the courage to always keep learning, growing, and paying it forward. Ebony wrote a beautiful letter to my dad, which is on display over on the shelf. My dad was a loyal and dedicated person. He remained friends with his high school buddy, Boyce Honey, and his wife, Sandra, for all of his life. Once you were in my dad's life, you were in for life. Dad loved my mom fiercely. As Jenny said, they would have been married for 60 years this July. Even through my dad's failing cognition over the past 5 years, he would jump up out of his chair every time my mom would start to get up so he could help her. Of course, he made her coffee every morning, which Jenny mentioned. They always held hands when they walked. He had to know where Mom was. If I took Mom somewhere, he would call it 300 times. Where is your mother? Where's your mother? And somebody was always with him, usually Liz, reminding him that they'll be still home soon. My parents truly modeled a lifetime commitment to one another. My dad wasn't perfect. Like all humans, he had his stuff. But he worked to be a present and loving father to all of us and a husband to my mom. I don't recall him missing even one of my hours-long ballet recitals or musicals, 5-hour swim meets in the heat, Little League, football, and all the stuff that the three of us did. He was there. Dad adored his grandkids. He thought you all were the most amazing people in the world. You could do no wrong, and he was so incredibly proud of all of them. They are brilliant and amazing in his eyes. Dad would get up early on Christmas morning, delighted by the kids' excitement. He sat in the driveway for hours and hours with the kids while they pretended to drive his car. He picked kids up for sleepovers in South Haven. He would hand them a couple of dollars for every sleepover to go to Walmart to get a special present or something. And then they would walk out of Walmart with half of the toy section, with Dad grumbling about Paula spoiling grandkids, but of course he never did anything about it. My dad had a great life. He would want us all to celebrate his life. So let's leave here today not sad that he's gone, but grateful that we got to have him in our lives for so long. I'm sure he's in heaven duct taping the heck out of everything and giving all the good dogs Fritos. I intend to continue to pay it forward, Dad, and I will miss you forever.
Thank you, Margaret. That was so beautiful. And Bem the Fourth, I'm sorry that in that list, I didn't mention the namesake grandchild here. So Bem the Fourth, how about that? Anyways, does anyone else want to offer any words or thoughts or stories? Please, and if you could just share, come on. No, come on up, please. But if you could just share your name and how you're related, that would be lovely.
I feel like I'm related. They made me feel like family. So, yeah, Margaret reached out a little over a year ago to be with Bem and Paula. And it's so fun hearing so much more about them, because you see a person where they're at, right? Where they're at, what they look like, all those different things. Handsome guy. Yeah. Gosh, I don't even know where to begin. It was just a blessing to be able to be there for Bem. He reminded me a lot of my dad. He never complained, not one bit. Just such a man, just, and he was frugal. The napkins always, I'd set out for lunch. I was always there every day but Tuesday and on the weekends. And we had lunch together, so from noon to 2. And always, put out the napkins and he'd always tear it in half. Loved it. It was great. Remind me, I recycled the toilet paper rolls, so we're good. Yeah. We had a lot of fun getting out, right? We would go to Jody's. We would go to McDonald's for chocolate shakes. His was gone before we even started, right, Paula? Yeah. Got a chance to really get to know Margaret and Kathleen and some of you grandkids, but nice to see you again. Bem, and I got a chance, probably 3 weeks ago, to really have that nice time together when you came for a visit. He loved you all so, so much. Just loved you so much. I know there's more. I think, Paula, it's just the things we're going to miss, right? Yep. Sense of humor like you wouldn't believe. And, when Paula would be in the dentist office, we would actually sit there and have some really good, conversations. And he gave me advice for my kids. So just, keep them on track. And, just made us laugh. Yep. And loved Miss Molly so much, too. And I don't know, I'm just going to miss him. I'm going to miss him a lot. And thank you for letting me be a part of his life. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Liz Pagorsh. Liz. Yep. Live in the neighborhood. So.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anybody else like to come up? No? All right. All right. With that, we're going to have another song. Sarah's going to sing Amazing Grace at this time, which was the first song that Paula suggested be played here today when I met with them. So, thank you.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has promised good to me. His word my hope secures. He will my shield and portion be as long as life endures.
Thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Chuck, Bem's nephew, who's going to read an Irish blessing.
An old Irish blessing. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind always be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Please. Thank you.
As we leave this sacred gathering, the family warmly invites you to attend the luncheon afterwards right here in the building. Paula, Bem's family members, all of you, may you find meaning in Bem's death and find renewed meaning in your own lives as you go forward. Ben's eternal spirit by your side. And in the words of Bob Dylan that we heard earlier, when the evening shadows and the stars appear, and there is no one there to dry your tears, I could hold you for 1,000,000 years to make you feel my love. And now I invite everyone to stay seated, holding Paula in your hearts, and listen to Bem and Paula's song, I Left My Heart in San Francisco, the soundscape of their love story. Go in peace. I know. It's so much. I mean, it was so much fun because I thought he was like super cool. I mean, there's some folks that just you don't know much about them, or they're not as likable. And it's kind of like, how do we make this like put a little shine on this, you know? So, anyways.
You know, writing what to say, and it's like, we can just Google him. You know, there's like, he's.
Isn't that the coolest? Did you help with that, with the eulogy? Okay, yeah, because it came on a Google Doc. Okay, I was like, okay, okay, yeah, the obituary. That's what I think she sent, and it looked like it was a document that had your name attached to it, or at least you were an editor. So, oh, that's great. That's good. Oh my gosh, wow. So yeah.
When I was little, I was so cool. I mean, he's a professor.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's
Whoa.
right up my alley.
College professor. How cool. That's funny. Last night, we were at, I don't know if you remember Daniela from Mandy's Littlest. She was,